All right, thanks everyone for coming. I'm going to be showing off a lot of the things that we have in 15.3.2, and actually a lot of them are just dealing with Scrum functionality and project planning. So it's actually very exciting, just all the things that we do have coming here. So it's not necessarily a new feature. It's nothing really that's, it's not a new section that you need to completely relearn. We just kind of really redid some of the existing features like the burn down and other Scrum metrics just to be much more powerful here. All right, let's just go ahead and get started. So some of the ones that I'll actually be focusing on, let me just go dive right into my Prezi, are the metrics that you guys can use just with either Scrum or Agile development, really just any type of project planning. And kind of like the three big changes that we've made are, we gave you guys a new speedometer gadget. We also updated the burn down chart just to adjust for changes in scope. And there's a lot of different ways that we can do that, and a lot of different ways that we can give that information back to you, which is really helpful just for, of course, sprint planning, but also just in sprint retrospectives and just regular project management, just to see how your sprints and releases are in fact going. And we also just made a couple of updates just to the release planner, just to change the way that it calculates its capacity, just so it's more in tune with the burn down charts and other things you would be doing with planning. All right. So let me just go ahead and hop right over to the Axosoft application. What I have here is just one of my sample databases. So if you're a new customer and you started out with sample data, this is pretty much the exact same thing that we have here. And I'm going to be working with Sprint 3, which is just like a current sprint that I have. So this sprint is actually in progress. So if I go ahead and look at a burn down chart, the burn down chart looks very similar to the ones that you have now. But one thing that you might notice immediately is right here that we have a brand new speedometer gadget that kind of replaced our old projected ship date gadget. And the neat thing about this is that we still give you all of the exact same information that we usually provided. We do still have the ship date here, and it'll show in red if you're projected to be late, white if you're on time, and green if you're a few days ahead of schedule. But we decided that the speedometer gauge is just a good way just to give you a lot more information in a method that's just very recognizable and easily readable. So what this is actually going to show is that it's going to have a needle point here just for my actual velocity, how fast my team is working, how many hours per day they're actually working on items there, and how much work they're getting done. So this needle, of course, will show on the speedometer, and if it's in the green section right here, you're projected to be on time and early. So really, like the border of this green and yellow right here, right where this line is, this is going to be your required velocity. So how fast do I need to be going in order to finish on time? So right now you can see that I'm going to finish a little bit late. It's showing, it's predicting about December 18th. And I'm currently working about, almost 18 hours a day. So here, if I just kind of want to add the remaining estimate field here, just so we can see. And let's say that feature number 29, I was working on this morning, about to go get lunch, and I put in 4 hours. So I'm going to go ahead and log my 4 hours worth of work. And now it's going to update both my burn down chart and the speedometer with that time remaining. So now you can see, okay, I'm actually projected to be on time. I'm actually now in this green section here. All right. So this is kind of cool because you can easily see where you are, how fast you're going compared to how fast you need to be going. And this yellow section kind of gives you a little bit of a buffer. It's basically 10% below what your required velocity is. And if you're truthfully, if you're within the yellow, that's usually pretty good as well, because it'll be updated when you add work logs and when you add other ones. So if you're in the yellow, you're still pretty good, because if you are adding work logs, say at the end of the day, it could definitely bump you over just to be back in the green section, which is where you want to be. So you will notice that we did replace the existing gadget there. So it's neat because it's also there when you view the daily stand-up as well. And if you're in the dashboard, you still have all of the previous options that we had for required velocity, current velocity, projected ship date. It's just that all of those metrics we can kind of really display all in one spot right here in the speedometer for you. So if you want to have each of those as a separate number on your dashboard, you still can. They're all available options there. But this way we want to give you just as much information, without having to update, 3 different gadgets. Okay. So while yes, this is cool because we're kind of displaying information in a more friendly manner, we've also done a lot just to update how accurate your predictions are, how accurate the calculations for your velocity are, for the required velocity, as well as how accurately we're gauging how fast your team actually is working. So let me go ahead, and I want to get rid of this legend for you. Okay. So one of the things I want to talk about is ways that we've updated the burn down chart that really help just when you're in the middle of a sprint, when you're actually working on it, and how any adjustments to the scope will be reflected in the burn down chart. So right here, I've got a sprint that I've been working on for the past few days. And one of the things that we have, we've got 146 hours of work remaining. So let's kind of use the example that, all right, the CEO comes in, or the product owner just saying, hey, I just noticed, we need to add a couple of things just to this sprint in order to get done. Something that's not ideal, but of course, does happen quite often. So let me just go ahead and grab a couple of items, maybe like these first couple ones here. So I've got 5 items, which is really 60 hours worth of work. And now if I just drag and drop these items into my current sprint, what we're going to see is, of course, the hours being added. Now we've got 206 hours of actual work remaining. But for all of the previous dates as well, you'll see a data point here showing those 60 hours of your scope being added. So that's great because it's very easily discernible from the other data. You can see, oh, well, anything that was this lighter blue is actual work that I had committed to at the beginning of the sprint. And then the other one is scope that's been added. These are new items that have been just moved in and are now kind of on my plate. All right. So you'll notice that I went ahead and I just added a couple of items, but I'm not working any harder or I'm not working any more slowly. My team's doing the same amount of work. We just decided that there are a couple of other items that they need to work on too. And because of that, the actual velocity hasn't changed. And this is actually something that up until now in Axosoft, your actual velocity was really only calculated by the difference between the first day and the last day. But now, since we're able just to go ahead in the past days and kind of add that previous scope, your actual velocity isn't changing just because you've added or removed items. It stays exactly the same. All right. So this is, of course, great for when you're adding items. You can kind of more accurately see how just those new items affect your projected ship dates and your other metrics as well. And of course, the same is true for if you are removing items. So let me just go ahead and grab one item right here, item number 142. There's 16 hours of work remaining on this. And let's say, okay, you know what? I'm not actually going to finish this one. I'm going to need to go ahead and move it to version 1.1. All All right. So the same thing happened. It just went and it actually removed that work from today's point. And it actually did also remove that work added from the previous states as well. So the burn down chart, it's smart enough to know if it was if it's from the scope added chart or if it's from the kind of like the principal blue one, it subtracts it from the correct data point there. But again, just because I'm taking an item from the current sprint and moving it to a later one, it's not affecting my velocity. So this is great because, if you do have to go and swap around a couple of things, you're not getting incorrect readings on basically how fast your team actually is working. So those are pretty straightforward actions whenever you're adding or removing items that you haven't really started working on. There is one kind of neat little feature here that we have. If you go to Edit, just your actual burn down chart, and you select to show the legend, whenever you do remove work from the sprint, we do add this additional series called scope removed. So if you ever want to see, okay, I want to look at this, I want to view this release and just see, all the work that I actually did end up removing, when it was removed, and how much work there was. If you add this series here, now all you really need to do is just, you can hover over all these data points and you can see, oh, okay, on today, December 18th, I removed 16 hours worth of work from my chart. So it's it kind of gives you a little insight just to what was removed, why it was removed, and when it was removed. It does actually add it as a negative data point. So it will show kind of below the axis. And that's kind of one of the reasons why we had it by default just being hidden, just because it can scrunch your burn down and can be a little bit of might be a little bit confusing for some users there. But if you want to kind of see when items removed were removed, it's really kind of a neat little secret menu item that we have. Cool. So this is pretty standard, whereas I'm just adding and removing items that I haven't really started work on. But one of the neat things is that we can also take a look at items that I have actually been doing work on, and if we ever do remove those from our sprint, it's almost like it's wasted effort at that point, where I'm my team's been putting hours and they've been working toward these things, and now all of a sudden it's taken off their plate. It's bumped to a later release. That's really kind of wasted effort, and we wanted a way to highlight that information. So this is one of the things I want to show you. What I'm going to do is actually just going to add the actual duration field just to my menu here. And we'll take a look at some items that my team has actually started working on. So we can see, all right, there's this item here where we've worked on it for 10 hours, but there's 6 hours remaining. There's 3 hours remaining here, but they've already worked on it for 9 hours. So like, for instance, if I just grab these couple of items, now when I go ahead and drag and drop these into the new, if I drag them out of the release, what it's going to do is, of course, subtract the remaining estimate from the data points, just like it did when I was removing items I hadn't started working on. And this right here is really only 11 hours. So it's going to remove those 11 hours here. But the only thing is that I've wasted all this time. So it's really about an additional, we've got 21 hours of time that's actually kind of wasted. So if I drag and drop these, say, okay, unfortunately, we're not going to get these done. We need to bump these to a later version. If I drag and drop those out of the version now, you'll see a new series called Removed Scope Work. And this is actually kind of just like, highlighting how much time I've actually wasted working on items that are now removed from my scope. These are man hours that could have been going to, fixing other bugs or working on other features that are never actually going to be delivered to my customers because we had to move them to a later release. And here we can see right there are the 21 hours that we actually had that we removed out. So of course, ideally this would be, 0, that you would never actually see. I'm sorry. Um, you would never actually have working. You would actually never be working on items which are then being removed, because um, you know we don't want to. We want everything just to go, just all of our efforts to be going towards our customers, to what our customers actually see in our product. So this is kind of a good way just to highlight, how much time is actually wasted just by, little adjustments in your scope. Um, so really, all that I've been doing up to this point is just moving items into and out of a release that I've been working on. So that's good. That actually accounts for, scope changes, saying, I'm going to add more things to your plate or take other things off your plate. But something else that's almost just as important when working in Scrum development is, estimating items and finding out how accurate your estimations really are. So, for instance, one of the things that we have is, let's say I've been working on this item, number 141. Let's say I was working on it for 2 hours today. But now I found out that there was a huge setback. I need to, refactor all this code and do it, make a lot of other changes to get this item to work. So let's say, okay, instead of, just having another afternoon left, another 4 hours, let's say I've actually got another 44 hours. I found out, oh my God, this is going to take a whole other week to complete. Yeah, it's definitely dramatic, but sometimes things like this happen. And now, just by updating the remaining estimate for your items, now when I go ahead and save this item, we'll see actually another series here called item estimate changed. And that's really exactly as it says. So this item, the estimate has changed on it from what I initially thought it was going to be, and it was actually 40 hours of difference. So this is great, because it does actually highlight kind of how it does highlight any changes in your estimation, so you can kind of immediately see those, because a lot of times that's what can cause teams some trouble, is that they'll say, oh yeah, that'll just take a day, and then it ends up taking a week. So like the second that they realize, okay, this is really going to take a week, they can enter their work log for that day, and then just update the estimate with kind of like their best guess of what it's going to take. And now your Scrum Master can see, oh wow, I've got this extra green block here, which is an extra 40 hours, which I hadn't budgeted for. It wasn't on the plan, because I couldn't foresee these things when we were actually planning. But now I'm kind of immediately just giving that information to my team and to my manager that okay, there's an extra 40 hours, we need to find it from somewhere. So of course this is great for items that you are working on, that you kind of discover, oh, this is going to take a lot longer. But also one of the things that it's most convenient for are for items that like they're little bugs that just they come up, and you kind of work on it for an hour and then set them aside. So you don't really take the time to estimate how much time it's gonna take, and you couldn't foresee it at the beginning of the sprint, because it's something that just popped up. And so many of those just really do add up, just kind of accumulating after a while. And we want a way just to have that to be able to be reflected in the burn down chart. Because actually up to this point, if you kind of had an item that you just found a bug, you submitted it really quickly, and then you went ahead and fixed it on the same day, it didn't really reflect anything in the burn down chart. So let's just use this as an example. Let's go ahead and quickly add a bug. And I'll just say throws error on double click. Okay, so just a little bug that I went ahead and I fixed there. But now if I go ahead and just add a work log saying, okay, you know what, this took me 4 hours to fix, and I go ahead and save it, that 4 hours is actually kind of treated as an item estimate changed. It's work that I had that I wasn't actually expecting to do, but just kind of came up last minute. Because basically, whenever you do add a work log, if the remaining time on that item is 0, like I didn't even estimate that item. I just said, okay, there were 0 hours there. What it does is that it does actually add that to it does actually kind of add that to the item estimate changing there. And kind of like the reason for that is, say that you had an item that was going to take, you thought it was going to take 10 hours. You already worked 10 hours on it. You've logged all of your work, just working on the past couple of days, and now it's not not quite complete. Just by adding another work log for those 4 hours, it'll add that time and just say, okay, that was the item estimate changed, and actually, you know what, that was really more of an issue with my estimation, because I was off. I underestimated that item there. So this is kind of really helpful just for you to be able to see exactly what's going on as you're making those adjustments to your estimates, and also it does kind of work quite a bit in conjunction with the estimated versus actual chart that you have, because then you'd be able to see, okay, this is what I additionally, or this is what I initially estimated items to be. This is how much work was actually remaining, and this is how much work I'd actually gone. So, of course, ideally these should be equal, but if they're kind of off by any size or off by any measure, that just means that it's we were estimating time differently than how much it was actually taking us. Cool. So not only can we track, of course, just changes in that we have in estimate and when work is added and removed, it'll also be updated if you do the opposite. If you just say, okay, well, yeah, I thought this was going to be 44 hours. Actually, now on closer examination, it's really more like 20 hours. It'll just go ahead and subtract that time as well. So really, any types of adjustment in scope will actually just go ahead and be updated so that your burn down kind of reflects exactly what was going on for all those items. Cool. So that's kind of how it'll affect your current burn down. If you're actually in a sprint and you move items in and out, or make any adjustments to your estimation, we're going to adjust accordingly and just kind of section off those different pieces of data as different series for the burn down chart. But also, one of the other kind of great consequences of being able to accommodate these changes in scope is actually now you've got a much more powerful release burn down. If we take a look at this burn down, this is a lot prettier than some of your release burn downs might actually look. And the reason for that is because previously we weren't taking into account any of these changes in scope or estimation or wasted time. So you might actually see something like this. And the reason for this was because when we were planning out sprint 1, that's just when we added all of our items, either into version 1.0 or beneath. And then when we started planning, what are we going to do for the next time? These are all new items that I've then, kind of added on and there. So it's, I'll do all my work, add more work, do all my work, add my work. And that doesn't really get a good, velocity. It's hard to get, kind of overall trends from that. But now, since we actually are adding all of that data now for our calculations, we've got a much more kind of filled out burn down. So now it doesn't matter when you add your items. It doesn't matter that you haven't planned 3 sprints ahead. Just the fact that you are estimating your items and putting it in your sprints will kind of update this overall burn down and really give you some good kind of forecasting there. So this is great because if you've got a couple of sprints that go a little bit over, some go under, just by having this resultant burn down, is great for getting a big picture, especially for teams if you just work with 1 to 2 week sprints, and this happens kind of over and over. By being able to take a step back, you can really get a good idea of the work that your team is doing. Cool. So let me just go ahead, and I want to talk a little bit, or just kind of put some of the things that we were talking about just into actual words. I've got a little dangling bullet there. So the scope changing, any newly added items are going to add the workload to all the previous days that we saw. And anything that you add and remove isn't going to affect your velocity, because your velocity is now truly dependent on how many hours your team is actually logging. So moving items out of a sprint, of course, we'll subtract only the current remaining estimate from the previous days. Anything that you had actually been working on those items, which are now removed, will show up as that removed scope work. That's that bright green. That's kind of your wasted time. And then also one of the things I was going to point out right now is that the release planner now actually has been updated. So previously, the release planner was just looking at your initial estimate. So you initially estimate, okay, all these items are going to take me 500 hours. I dump them in the release planner, and now it says, oh, I've got a capacity of 500 hours. But now, actually, from a lot of requests from our customers, we've updated it to kind of be a little bit more reasonable of an option, which is what it does is that it actually looks at the remaining estimate of all the items at the time it was moved into that release, the time you were actually planning it. So that's great, because it doesn't matter if you initially thought, okay, this item's going to take me 20 hours. But there's only 3 or 4 hours left. It'll only account those 3 to 4 hours, because that's the current remaining estimate. And this is also great because it actually should now be in line with what you have for the burn down chart. So for the burn down chart, the first data point that you have, like the actual start day, should pretty much be in line with what you have for your sprint planning there. That used to not be the case. They used to be slightly different measurements, because your release planner was pulling from the initial estimate, whereas the burn down was always pulling from the remaining estimate on that day. So, just kind of making sure that all the information is a little bit more cohesive and can really help you kind of plan the sprints, where if there are items that are kind of half completed and you just are doing like a quick shore up sprint, it really helps you just kind of do cleanups on all those items which have already started work. All right. So of course we've covered moving items in and out of the sprint. The estimate changes. So of course any increases in estimate are going to show kind of in that darker green as just saying, okay, these are the reason that this is off is because I actually underestimated these items initially. That's the same as if you just don't even estimate items at all. Like say that something comes up that it's really urgent. We don't want to hold you back from fixing it because you didn't estimate how much time it's going to fix. You're going to be spending time working on it until it is fixed, and we wanted a way to have that actually reflected in the burn down, and that'll be included in that green series. But the one thing that we do recommend is that if you are a team, if you work in story points, or if your team does absolutely nothing with work logs, you basically just say, okay, well this item's 2 story points worth of work, or this one's 5 story points, and then you just go ahead and you work on it, and then once completed, you've got a step action that changes it to 0, which Axosoft does by default, and a lot of our teams do. If that's the case, if you're never actually going and logging work, what we do then recommend, in order for the burn downs to kind of build correctly, as well as giving you a lot of helpful information with the estimated versus actual chart, and the speedometer gadget. What we would actually recommend is that you add a requirement to add a work log actually on that last step. So you don't need to do it when you're actually working. You don't need to bug your developers to log their time at the end of every day. But what we would then recommend is just, go into your workflow settings for, whenever you are completing an item. And then under other settings, there is require user to log work. So this is basically just saying, okay, you're putting it in the completed step. This item obviously didn't complete itself. You did, you did some kind of work on it. And even if you're not logging work in hours, even if you are working strictly in story points, what this kind of allows you to do is, here, let's take an item that's currently in progress and move it to be completed. Okay, so what this is doing is that it is adding a work log, and then, but even if you're not, logging work or whatever, if you are working strictly in story points, this kind of allows you just to validate. Okay, now that you've actually done the work, you've seen everything that goes into it, and you've actually gone through all the testing and everything that you need. Do you still think that that story was 2 story points worth of work? If it was, great, just enter in that same time. If you're like, okay, well, actually, now that I'm working on it, it was really more like 3 story points. Then when you're actually adding that there, it's a really good way just to validate, okay, how good are you in your estimation? Because that'll be used in the burndown chart as well as the dashboard when you're kind of taking a look at the estimated versus actual. So even though you're not logging work, you're not saying, okay, I worked 4 hours today, 4 hours here, 6 hours here. It's now knowing what you do now, do you still think that that item was 2 story points or 3 story points, and just kind of gives you a very easy way just to update that item. All right. Cool. So that's basically it for these Scrum features. And we've also, of course, made a number of other enhancements just to the product, because we're always just taking your feedback and trying to incorporate it wherever we can. So one of the things which was actually probably one of our most requested features is just the ability to add attachments that are non-images to like wiki pages or large text fields. And so we've gone ahead and we've made it kind of very easy for you. Let me just, I don't have the wiki up here. Here, so if I was just to edit this wiki page, and if I wanted to add a link to a PDF, we now have this paperclip icon. So the paperclip icon is for attaching files. This image is for inserting images from files. But if I click on the paperclip, we could just go ahead and grab any of these. I've just got a test PDF document here and upload it. So anything that you add using the paperclip, what it's going to do is that it's just going to make a hyperlink with just a direct link to the attachment. So now if I'm a customer looking at this on your portal or another user in Axosoft, I can just click the link and it'll download directly. Oh, sorry, I think we were having a little bit of audio difficulties. So what it will do is that it creates a hyperlink, and then anytime you are viewing it and then click on the hyperlink, it'll download it directly to your browser. One of the other kind of neat things that I like to show off, kind of another little secret menu item, is that of course we can add images as attachments as well. You could even copy and paste them from a clipboard. But if you want to add a file to download, what you can do is first add it as an attachment, and then if you say, okay, I don't want it to have it as a hyperlink, but I want to have it if this user ever clicks on this image, it could be a download now button or anything that you build. What you could do is just double click on the link for the actual attachment, and then if you go and you copy that URL, now all you need to do is just double click on the actual image, and then under the link, you can just put this as a target. So now that actually kind of makes the image a clickable hyperlink. And if you click there, it does the same thing. It's going to download that file. So just like a little secret thing, but it can really kind of help out if you're making a lot of documentation pages for your customers and really want to have some really kind of professional looking pages or entry for items. It just kind of makes it a little bit more attractive. Cool. So that's one of the things we could do. You can add them. I showed in a wiki page, but any actual large text field that you have, like if you want to update Word docs or PDF files for bugs that you're submitting or other ones, it works exactly the same there in those text editors as well. And then one of the other small things, but is definitely kind of a quality of life improvement that we have is that, let me just kind of grab a couple of items for an example. Oh, because I was trying to make an item a sub item of another sub item, so it threw an error. So one of the things that we've done whenever you're filtering or searching for an item, we've kind of made it a little bit easier to identify, kind of exactly what you're looking for. So if we just have, the word page, we're looking for the word page in the title. We can see it there. And let me expand all of my sub items so I can see this. So this item right here, item number 13, is one that actually matches my filter. I searched for the word page, and it's got benefits info page here. But if I'm looking at that item with all of its other sub items, previously in Axosoft, it would show just this full data set here exactly the same. But we wanted to give you kind of like a little bit easier way just to identify, okay, well, this is what I was actually searching for. I've got everything else here, so if it still gives me great context, so I can see, oh, well, this is the parent item that it belongs to, and this is everything else that's related, but really makes any of the results of your query just really kind of jump out at you a little bit more. So if you just see some items being grayed out, that's all that it means, that it's not exactly matching your filter or grouping. We made updates just to child pick lists so that they can actually be made required. So any of your child pick lists can actually require user input as well, something that's been requested quite a few times by our customers. And then, of course, this, just like all of our other updates, we try to focus quite a bit on performance. And we actually did quite a bit in this release. And so much so, we've actually increased the number of items that you can display per page. So actually, previously, we were limited to 200 items just per page. And now you can see we've actually, even more than doubled that. And so you can have up to 500 items being displayed per page at any time. And this is great for really, really large teams, or if you've got a huge backlog that you're just trying to sort through and rank. Now you don't need to worry about items getting kicked over to the other page. It's very easily just easy that you can just scroll up and down and find all those items. All right. Great. So that's basically it for just kind of the part of the webinar where I'm just showing off some of the features here. We definitely want to thank all of you guys for coming. I know that Jonathan's been going and trying to answer some of your questions as much as you can. We'll try to get to those in a minute. But definitely, if you do have questions, please keep sending them our way. We're here to hopefully get some good feedback and clarify anything that you guys do have.